everybody has music in them, I believe.
Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Dr. Marc here at Dementia Spring. I'm so thrilled to have as my guest today for our dialogue about the arts and dementia, Judith-Kate Friedman, who is the founder of the Songwriting Works program. The Songwriting Works program brings songwriters together with folks with dementia and their caregivers to compose and perform their own music and song. I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about Songwriting Works for folks who are not familiar with the program, and then we'll talk more about your background and how you came along this journey of working with people with memory loss. But tell us about the program a little bit first.
It's an artist-run organization, so it involves professional songwriters serving communities as front-end facilitators of programs with people across the cognitive and physical and emotional health continuum, usually over the age of 50, 55, 60, 65, depending on which community relates to the age of elders as some number. The focus is group work. It's constellating a song, but the initial idea about Songwriting Works as an organization was to bring the work that I'd started doing as an individual artist to many, many more people and begin training professional songwriters as facilitators, which has happened in a small way so far, but steadily.
That's amazing. Folks will be amazed to learn that you have people with memory loss, including people in some assisted living and nursing homes, composing and then singing songs.
Absolutely, yes. And everybody has music in them, I believe. And we know the power of music for communities and for people, and we know it for people who are living with dementia. And it's one of the last pieces of connection really to go. And it is one of the ones that there's much more exploration that we can do yet to see how original people can be, even when they are dealing with all kinds of changes cognitively, and yet their personhood is still intact.
It's so interesting because a lot of the work that we do here at Dementia Spring is highlighting artists, visual and performing artists in particular, who work with folks with memory loss. And a common thread is that after speech, regular speech, ordinary conversational speech is beginning to be more challenging for people. A lot of folks think that that means that sort of communication is over. But the reality, and I think you were just alluding to it, is that music and singing can last for a very long time, long after the ability to sort of have a little quick conversation.
Yeah, if you can't have a regular linear conversation anymore, there's all different kinds of ways that you can have conversations. You can have them rhythmically, you can have them with images, you can have them with sound, you can have them with gesture. If you're a facilitator that's looking for all of these ways of how you could make a song with people who have different abilities, especially if there's more than one person in a room, people end up having all kinds of communication, including with their loved ones, that no one expected.
Can you recall sort of when that first time that you tried to do some of the songwriting work with people with dementia?
Well, the very first, there were about 60% of the people who I first worked with had dementia. It was adult day centers in San Francisco. And it was a program called Artworks, which was at the San Francisco Institute on Aging at that time. And what they were doing was gathering and then training groups of individual artists of all disciplines. So I got to be on a team with muralists, textile artists, theater people, a clown. And so we got to really get down every week and have a deep training, which is now why I'm so passionate about training others in how to serve older adults. So I had that training, and then I went into communities because we had to serve more people. And I was just told, you're a songwriter, so do the thing that's most meaningful to you. Write songs with these groups of people. I said, how am I going to do that? And Robert Rice, of blessed memory, who's an awesome human being, he just said, well, you're going to figure it out. So I started just figuring it out in whatever way I figured it out. And so I was just asked by people that observed the work, enjoyed the songs that were coming together, do you ever work with an all dementia population? And I said, I'm willing. So let's just go in and see what happens. That is where I started saying that people with dementia are my teachers. And I really still feel that way. For instance, yes, everybody was in mild to moderate, pretty moderate stage where they could still be in adult day settings, but short-term memory not happening for people. And this woman was talking about Hawaii, and she's describing it to me, and I'm singing it back to her. Sometimes I would be playing around with making up melodies myself. Most of the time, and certainly later after those early years, people came up with the melodies as well as the words. And that's really an important part of how it evolved. But at first, it was me listening, singing back exactly what she said. And she said, I don't know who said that, but I sure do feel that way. And I thought, okay, lesson number one, big time. The person is completely there. They're totally relating to their own story. They don't know that it was their story. It doesn't matter. What matters is what the story is and how they're relating to it in the moment over and over again. It's turning an interesting corner. It's not the way we're used to relating to each other, but in the creative process, it's essential that we say yes to all those corners that we turn. And that's how we get to these places that we would never expect to get to.
It must be a revelation for caregivers when they are with their loved ones and watching them do this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite stories from the care partner's point of view is there was one man in the rural area here. There was a reminiscence about riding on the back of an elephant that someone had, and everyone was kind of like, oh, and so we're like, okay, can you imagine what that's like? We're way up there. And they wrote a beautiful song about that called Way Up in the Air. And it opened this memory of this gentleman to tell his World War II story of serving in the Marines. And he started talking, and we're writing it down verbatim. And it was poetry right out of, he said, on the way over in World War II, I was with my twin brother in the Marines. We went all over Africa, China, Korea, Japan, South Pacific. The war got over. We came back home both alive, at which point someone in the back of the room said, hallelujah. And there were younger family members there because we were explicitly including family members. So this one family said, he keeps saying, I can't believe they put my words up on the wall. And in the end, she wrote to me 6 months after the project and said, we realized by songwriting with our dad that he needed to be reunited with his twin brother who was still alive. And so they had him move back to Ohio so that the twins could be together in the last year of their lives.
That is fantastic. And it just shows how much music and song interact with memory and interact with the whole person.
It's cool that some of the science actually says that when the frontal lobe relaxes, the creativity from the back end of the brain has more of a place to play. And that's why people do meditation and a lot of other reasons to allow their creativity to come forward. People with dementia are actually in that state, but need engagement because it's the lack of engagement that actually hastens the disease.
For artists who are starting out in their journey working with the dementia community, and we work with some of them at Dementia Spring, some of them are filmmakers, photographers, performing artists, dancers. What's your advice for them as they sort of tiptoe down this road of working with this pretty complex and pretty challenging community?
Be yourself and just be present and your good-hearted, interested self with a very open mind. It takes a lot of work on the part of a facilitator to be that free and that trusting of our own processes. I remember when a young woman who was at a training that I was part of heard about this songwriting piece. She was hearing about different modalities and she was excited about the songwriting. She came over to speak with me and she said, is this something that I can try? like totally, totally nervous. And I said, "Who are you working with?" And she said, "Well, I'm working on the memory care unit." And I said, "Yes, because if you make a mistake, nobody will remember. It doesn't matter. You can be so free to just be your good-hearted self with people and see what catches. And then the techniques that you end up learning by practicing them and reading about it in a book is only partly good compared to trying stuff out." Another point that I wanted to make is that early on, it was standard practice for care facilities to have very short programs for people who were considered to have short attention span. And when I moved to rural Western Washington, I was asked to do a 2-hour program with people with memory loss. And I said, "I'm game for anything, and let's have a refreshment break in the midpoint." And the first hour, nothing happened of great. I mean, it's not nothing, but nothing of great consequence actually happened. There was the beginning of a songwriting with 2 more active people in the room, and there were 7 people who looked in various degrees of not being engaged at all. So I'm just trying to read it, and I've been doing this a long time, and I'm like, I wonder about this, the other thing. We had a little pick-me-up, but I don't think it was the food. We came back, and the sentences that people had were getting longer. The interactiveness between the individuals was getting more sparked. And by the end of that second hour, we had a beautiful song. So I said, "Wow," to the staff, "how did we do that? What do you think happened? Is it that it took that long for them to trust me? They'd never seen me?" He said, "People with long latencies need more time to orient." So I then asked a researcher, and she gave a beautiful metaphor that I wanted to share with people here, which is that you can imagine with all the rains, there's now a mudslide, and you're in a rural town, and you don't have a way of getting in and out except on one main road, and it's now blocked. Well, there's still the need to connect with the rest of the world. So eventually a detour is going to be created. She said, you have to think that the road is out, but that doesn't stop the person from wanting to communicate and participate. And the brain will do everything it possibly can to come around and make a new pathway. And that is a piece of teaching that I still think needs to get out there.
That totally resonates with me. I always try to impress on people the idea that if you're going to spend time with someone with dementia, you have to have patience. And you can't expect folks to be at your pace. And it is very hard for people to appreciate that the way to connect sometimes with a person with dementia is just to be very present and very patient. And you have to endure sometimes a lot of quiet. And that over time leads to connections, as you were talking about at the beginning, I think.
And isn't that a gift? Like, it's just this thing where we are each other's teachers, and it can be this incredible gift. Like, oh, look what was possible because we decided to try it and make space for it. So embracing some of those things that might otherwise seem to be annoying, or it's the same old thing, or maybe that person is caught up in a loop, well, then get in the loop and find out what the loop feels like, and see if you can dance with it in some degree, way. And usually something new will end up happening.
Well, that is truly inspirational, and it's been fantastic getting to know you and learn more about Songwriting Works and all the tremendous innovation that you've spearheaded and led for many years. So thank you for being so passionate and so committed, and for sharing what you do with us and the Dementia Spring community.
Thank you. I'm glad to be part of the growing community.